Good evening and welcome to the meeting for the Stearns County Board of Adjustments public hearing for June 24th, 2021. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll do a roll call. Jill DeLong.
Here.
Mike Hayne.
Here.
Dennis Gregory.
Here.
Dave Gamrat.
Here.
And Bonnie Mossman. I'm the chair. I'm here. Jacob Hulk, I believe, is not with us this evening. And Jason Crone, I believe, is not with us this evening. All right, in response to COVID-19 and pursuant to Minnesota Statute Chapter 12 relating to emergency management, Governor Walz has declared a state of emergency. In response to the state of emergency and in accordance with Minnesota Statute Chapter 13D.021, all Board of Adjustment members, except for the chair and applicants, are participating by telephone or other electronic means. In-person attendance and comments from the public will not be allowed to conform with the MDH and the CDC guidelines to minimize gatherings. This meeting is broadcast live, and members of the public were asked to submit their comments by 3 p.m. today. All right, we have a few announcements to make first. I'll be asking or notifying you that all testimony this evening is being recorded for the record. So when you would like to speak, if you are a guest or an applicant, we ask that you state your name and your address for the record first, and then go ahead with the input after you've been recognized by the chair. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts, 1 member at large, and 1 member appointed by the Planning Commission. I'll read, to begin the public hearing, I will read the variance request, and that opens the public hearing. When I'm reading the request, I ask that the applicant be on board and ready to make comments. Will, as I said, state your name and your address for the record, and first of all, environmental service staff will provide a brief overview of the request, and then the staff report, and if there's been any correspondence that we've received regarding that request. Then I will ask the applicant to provide any input, corrections, concerns, or comments that they might have. Once the applicant or their representative have finished, the board will discuss the request and ask any questions of staff or the applicant. Upon completion of the questions, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience or anyone online wishing to speak to the request. Once we've finished that, I will ask the board members for a motion to close the public hearing. Once the motion has passed to close the public hearing, there'll be no more further input from the audience, from the applicant, from environmental services staff, unless they're recognized by the chair or if one of the board members wants some type of clarification. On our agenda for this evening, the first item is approval of the May 24th, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, or do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Dennis Gregory.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Mike Hayne, second.
All right, Mike, we have a second. Anyone opposed to approval of the May 24th meeting minutes? Hearing none, they are approved. Now we will move on to approval of the May 27th, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there corrections, additions, or do we have a motion to approve?
Mike Kane, I'll move to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Dave Gamrod, I'll second.
All right, thank you, Dave. Is there anyone opposed to approving the minutes for the May 27th meeting? Hearing none, they are approved. Our first item for this evening is to consider a tabled request from Carla Wensman Contractors LLC, Avon, Minnesota, on behalf of Patterson Lake Homes LLC, Toluca Lake, California, from sections 10.2.11A, 1A, and 2 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct an addition to an existing legal non-conforming principal structure less than 100 feet landward of Big Watab Lake, classified as recreational development, and ahead of the established building line. The said ordinance requires structures to be placed a minimum of 100 feet landward of a lake classified as recreational development or at or behind the established building line. In addition, from section 6.2.1P of the Stearns County Subsurface Sewage Treatment System Ordinance 422 to construct the said addition less than 20 feet from a soil treatment area. The said ordinance requires structures to be set back 20 feet from a soil treatment area. The affected property is Lot 6 and a portion of Lot 7 of Genmardo Shores, Section 9, Track 124 North, Range 30 West of Collegeville Township. And the property address is 30246 Lilac Road, St. Joseph, Minnesota. And our applicants with us?
Chris Vaughn is here, Madam Chair.
All right, and do we have, is Carla Wensman there also?
Greg Wensman is
Greg
here.
is there? All right, and we'll be back to you in just a moment. So if staff, if you could give us your overview, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. As you indicated, the subject property is Lot 6 and the southwest part of Lot 7 of Genmardo Shores, which was platted in 1960. That's prior to any official controls. Their submitted certificate of survey indicates the tract is 12,646 square feet. The original home was constructed as a 2-bedroom dwelling unit in 1961, according to our county assessor's records. And the previous owners obtained a construction site permit in 2006 to put on a 24 by 24 addition. And that included 2 bedrooms that were not reflected on the application, thus making it a 4-bedroom dwelling. The current owners purchased on August 27th of 2014. They did put in a new septic system in the year 2017 to accommodate the 4 bedrooms in the dwelling. There was construction site permit obtained in February 2020 to construct additions. They now would like to kind of redo the existing 14 by 20 deck to a 6 by 14 covered deck and a 14 by 14 screen porch. According to our county assessor's records, that original deck was constructed in the year 2000, and there is no permit on file. The deck is ahead of the established building line, 89.4 feet from the lake and 12 feet from the soil treatment area that was installed in 2017. At the previous hearing in April of 2021, the board, it was the board's wishes for the applicants, owners to develop a more comprehensive stormwater plan, and the parties did consult the Stearns County Soil and Water Office to take a look at that, and they did bring forward a revised plan on May 25th of 2021, which you have in your packets. This property is in R1 zoning. It's on Big Watab Lake, which is a rec development lake. There are no floodplain issues. Parcel is in the Avon Hills Natural Resource Area. The septic, as I stated, was installed in 2017, so no certification required. You have the revised plan in your packets. The impervious lot coverage for, according to their certificate of survey, is 24.4%, and this proposal will not increase that number. The decision tonight does have a potential to impact the future building line for adjacent lots. One alternative to the request would be to remove the unpermitted deck and use the space as an at-grade patio, be a step down from their door. Hypothetically, if the variance is denied, a motion could be considered to allow the existing illegal deck to remain. They would have to seek an after-the-fact permit to do that. Collegeville Township, the DNR, Big Watab Lake Association, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of the request. We do want to note that all of the mitigation options developed by the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation Office are just that, options to lessen the impacts to surface waters. It's not a requirement of Stearns SWCD that these options are implemented, and neither are they enforcing their implementation as a condition of granting a request. I don't have any correspondence that I'm aware of, Madam Chair, so you can turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members that did not visit the site when this item came before us previously that have visited it since then, so that we could have that in the record? Okay, hearing none, I'll assume then that those who that no new visits occurred. Okay, applicants, if you'd like to share with us your thoughts, either Mr. Spohn or Mr. Wensman.
Chair, this is Greg Wensman, 31126 163rd Avenue, Avon, Minnesota. Yeah, if I could just add, if I recall correctly from the previous meeting in April, some of the biggest concerns was the roof surface water due to the elevations of the spawns site was actually running onto the neighbor's property. And Chris Spahn, the property owner, myself, Greg Berg from Soil Water Conservation District, along with two of the neighboring property owners, and we phoned in one of the township supervisors to walk the site and just peruse different options of what we could do to resolve this surface water runoff. We first looked at piping the water underneath Lilac Road, and that was going to become very complicated and costly due to the height of Lilac Road, and it would have involved an engineer. We actually looked at just piping the water to the existing ditch on Lilac Road, which ran into some complications due to culvert elevations and elevations of the neighbors' ditches. And we didn't feel it was a good idea to push this water 1 or 2 lots down. And so we looked back at isolating and keeping it on the Spawns property. And a combination of us and Greg, we came up with this partial underground, partial above ground drainage system that would direct it into the original plan that Greg came up with, a vegetative buffer. In my position as the builder, I'm very comfortable with this. We're not putting any responsibility on the neighbor's property. In fact, I think we're improving it because we're taking the water now that's being directed to the cabin to the east, and we're channeling that, keeping it on the Spawns property. Maybe just another couple points. it's unfortunate that the deck was built the way it was without a permit. About the only good thing about it is the septic was designed with that deck in that location. So obviously WATAB was, when they designed it, they were aware of it and took it into consideration. So the distance to the drain field, shouldn't be that big of a deal. Chris, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, Greg, or just echo your comments about, looking at all the various options and working with Greg Berg and coming up with a solution that would sort of meet the needs. I think creating the runoff down by the lake, I think he won't use my words, his words would provide, a suitable solution. I think it improves the water runoff greatly from what it is right now, because now it just goes through the downspouts and runs off into our neighbors. And I think this would create a more responsible solution to route the water that would not fall into our neighbors. And in talking with both Dave and Kevin, they're both supportive of this. So, that's why we're back here with a more detailed plan per the board's request.
All right, thank you for your comments. Board members, do you have any questions for either staff or the applicant? Okay, hearing no questions, sounds like we might be ready to move on to findings, as I think there was a lot of discussion on this item at a previous meeting.
Madam Chair, I move to close the public hearing.
All right, thank you. And a second?
Second, Dennis.
All right, we have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. Is there anyone opposed to closing the public hearing? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed and we will move on to findings of fact. Now we have the option, I believe we are going to do two findings of fact. One would be to allow the existing legal or illegal deck to remain in the current location with an after the fact permit, and then to construct an addition onto the existing legal non-conforming principal structure less than 100 feet landward of Big Watab Lake, classified as a recreational development and ahead of the established building line. In addition to construct the addition less than 20 feet from a soil treatment. A question for staff. Was the second findings that I was given, was that an alternative in case we turn down the deck, or do we need to do both of these?
Madam Chair, I think the findings that you use would depend on the motion. So if a motion is made to deny, but to allow the deck to remain, then you would just do the after the fact findings on that.
All right, so we'll first just discuss findings of fact for allowing the deck. Is there some discussion with that before we do findings? Everyone's good with just going forward?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong. So my understanding is that we would only do one of the, like he said, so we either say, yes, they can build the addition, and if we say no to that, then we would do the after the fact for leaving the deck as is. And if we say no to that, then they have to remove the deck. So just to make sure I'm understanding, so what we would be doing would be the findings of fact for building an addition where the current deck exists. Does that sound correct?
That's correct. And the addition would be partially a enclosed screen porch and partially a roofed deck, I believe.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would agree with that. And so I think it's the second findings of fact that you were mentioning that we should do first. Yeah.
All right. Then we'll go ahead with those findings. Number one, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located. Yes or no?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, it's R1 zoned and additions are allowed in R1 zoned area.
All right, we have a yes for number 1. Does anyone disagree with that? Then I'll mark that as unanimous yes. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls and any related ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, 2 things I would point out. One is there is already a deck there, and I get that it's an illegal deck, and we could certainly have it removed, but it does exist already. And the second thing I would say is the applicant seems amenable to putting in a stormwater plan that protects the environmental resources. And so I think both of those are in harmony with the general purposes and intent.
All right, we have a yes for number 2. Anyone disagree? We'll mark that as unanimous yes. On number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, under Lakeshore Living Policies, number 2, encourage shoreline protection and restoration methods as vegetative buffers. So I believe if you would follow Greg's recommendation and add the buffers, it would be in harmony with the comprehensive plan.
All right, we have a yes for number 1, or excuse me, number 3. Anyone disagree?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I'd just like to build on to that with under Lakeshore Living Policies number 6, where we're expanding mitigation requirements for projects requesting to vary from lake setbacks to preserve the riparian environment and reduce erosion to enhance the water quality, which was why we had tabled this request and asked them to do additional work. So that way they are they are planning on mitigation requirements, and part of what they're having the variance for is there being less than 100 feet landward of the lake.
All right, thank you. So we have 2 yeses for number 3. Does anyone disagree with that? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous yes. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner.
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I believe that it is reasonable to want an external patio attached to your house living on a lake.
All right, we have a yes for number 4. Anyone disagree? We'll mark that as unanimous yes. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane.
Go ahead, Mike.
Because the applicants purchased the house with that existing deck on it, and they did not create the problem, a previous owner did. So I believe that would be a yes.
All right, we have a yes for number 5. Does anyone disagree?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I agree. I just want to be sure to mention too that the variance is not just how far away it is from the lake, but also how far away it is from the subsurface sewage treatment system. And so again, similar to that, the deck and the subsurface sewage treatment system were both there before they bought it in 2014.
Okay, thank you for that notation. So we have 2 yeses for number 5. Does anyone disagree? We'll mark that as unanimous yes. Number 6, the variance if granted maintains the essential character of the locality. I'm going to say that because the deck is currently there, the deck itself is not going to change the situation. It does change the building line for a neighboring property, but it looks like it's a minimal amount of change. Plus, both neighboring properties are probably being benefited by this because of control of the runoff. So I think if we give a little, we also get a little. So I'm going to say, yes, it'll maintain the essential character of the locality. Any other comments for number 6? All right, hearing none, we'll mark that as yes. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic concerns, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dave Cameron, I don't believe economics were part of this discussion.
All right. Does anyone disagree with yes for 7? Okay, hearing none, we'll mark that as unanimous yes, and we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I'd make a motion that we approve the applicant's request for a variance to construct an addition on an existing legal non-conforming structure, 89.4 feet, landward of Big Watab Lake, and ahead of the established building line, and 12 feet from the soil treatment area, with an extended condition here, with the condition that the applicant implement both the request or the information that Greg Berg provided for our April meeting as to the type of native plant buffer that should be existing, and with the stormwater plan that was submitted on May 25th, 2021, that we were showing on the screen as well, that they implement both of those recommendations or plans from soil and water.
All right. So we have a motion with two condition or with a two-part condition. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I will second it.
Thank you, Jill. We have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call for the remainder of the vote. Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Motion carries. So therefore, we do not need to do the second finding of fact, as the illegal deck would have been approved within this motion. We'd like to thank our applicants for being with us this evening. If you have additional questions, check with environmental services staff during regular business hours.
Madam Chair and the board, thank you for your consideration from last April for us being tabled and to provide additional information. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Our next item on our agenda is to consider the request from Jody and Linda Guringsman from Cold Spring, Minnesota, from sections 9.9.9A3 and 10.2.11A1B of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a residential accessory structure located in an R1 zoning district less than 50 feet from the right-of-way of County Road 49, classified as a minor collector, and less than 100 feet from the Sauk River, classified urban. The said ordinance requires a 50-foot structural setback to the right-of-way of a road classified as a minor collector and 100 feet from the structural setback to a river classified as urban. The classified property, or the affected property, is 1 acre, part of the southwest quarter of Section 22, Track 123 North, Range 30 West of Wakefield Township. And the property address is 16155 County Road 49, Cold Spring, Minnesota. And are the applicants with us this evening?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
All right, we'll be back to you in just a couple minutes. At this point in time, I'd like to do a roll call to see who was able to visit the site. Dennis?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And I also visited the site. So if we could go ahead with the staff report.
The applicants own a meets and bounds property that is 55,952 square feet in area based on their certificate of survey. They purchased the property in 2020. Property is located in an R1 zoning district. There is an existing 2,285 square foot residential dwelling with an attached garage that was allowed by variance, permitted, and was constructed in 1999 by a previous owner. The septic system that services the dwelling consists of a tank and drain field system that was permitted at the same time that the home was constructed in 1999. The system was certified compliant in 2020. At the March Board of Adjustment meeting, the applicants were granted a variance to construct an addition and deck to the residential dwelling. And apparently the shed was displayed incorrectly in terms of the dimensions on the survey for the original request, thereby necessitating a return to the board tonight with different setbacks than were originally requested. This property is in the shoreline overlay of the Sauk River, classified urban, and the Sauk River is on the impaired waters list for nutrients and mercury in fish. Subsurface sewage treatment system was certified, as we stated. The current lot coverage for the property is 9.2%. The proposed coverage when the project would be completed would be 12.1%. The Township of Wakefield, Sauk River Watershed District, Sauk River Chain of Lakes Association, the DNR, and owners within 500 feet have been notified of the request. I did get a electronic message from the administrator of the Sauk River Watershed District, and he wanted to remind me to remind the applicants that they will need to obtain a permit from the Sauk River Watershed District should the variance be granted. With that, I don't have any correspondence, and I'll return it to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Applicants, if you have any comments that you'd like to share with us?
Yes. When we originally submitted for the variance, we had asked for a 40 by 60 shed. And when the survey was submitted, we had submitted this back in November of last year, November or December of 20. And we weren't allowed to make that meeting because we still needed to move one of the utility companies. So at that point, it was postponed and we were put back until the utilities were moved, and then we ended up getting into the March meeting. Long story short, the survey that was submitted in November had the 40 by 60 shed on it. The survey that was submitted for the March meeting that you all approved had the 30 by 50 shed on it. The 69.2 setback is on the survey that we submitted in March that was approved. But somehow someone had the 40 by 60 survey, which had a different setback on it. But the one that you have now with the 69.2, that is the correct setback that we need for the 30 by 50 shed that was approved already.
Okay, thank you. So in summary, we are looking at a 10-foot change in the setback.
I think technically it's 10.4.
10.4.
Yeah.
10.4.
Yeah,
All right,
one
thank
of the
you.
board members wanted to leave a little bit of room in there in case they had to turn the shed due to a boulder or whatever they might need to.
Sure. Okay, if we have any questions for either staff or the applicant from board members?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, question for staff. I was a little bit surprised that this was a brand new application. We had a variance previously and we had mitigation options previously. Why couldn't we just amend the previous approved variance rather than going through the entire process again? It was clearly an error. Why couldn't we just correct the error?
Madam Chair, the public hearing was discussed, all the conversation in the hearing was discussed based on different setbacks, and therefore it was the department's decision that they needed to come back to the board for the correct setbacks.
Okay. At the meeting, we changed the setback amounts because we ultimately didn't approve the 60 by 40 shed. And so we knew it was going to be a 30 by 50. And we didn't realize that the survey reflected otherwise. And so, I guess I would respectfully, maybe disagree with the process. It seems like we should just amend the previous variance and be done.
If I could add to that,
Go ahead.
we tried that. Jamie Lucas tried very diligently to get that approved, but there is one certain person with the county that she has the authority to approve that, and she would not allow it. She would not talk to me. She would not consider it. So we went to our county commissioner, Mr. Mergen, and he took it to the board, and within 2 days had the fee waived and approved. But again, now another month and a half delay because of that.
Thank you for your comments. I do have to say, as a member of the Planning Commission, when I see something that is either part of the plan or written down as part of the plan, that's a reduction of 10.4, I see where that could involve additional discussion from board members. And so I can understand why it was brought back to us. That's just my opinion of it. If there's other board
Jill.
members that, yes,
Yeah,
Jill?
this is Jill DeLong. I agree with you, Bonnie. If it had been an increase of setback from 79 to 89, then I would be, oh yeah, sure, that makes sense. But because it's a decrease in setback from the river, so now it's only 69 feet versus 79.6, that to me is significant. So I do believe that it's good that it's here for additional discussion.
Well, Madam Chair, at the potential expense here of creating an issue, it was us, the board, that created that setback. I think it's unfortunate that we're going through this process, and so my frustration with this stands.
Okay, thank you for all those different sides of opinions on the issue. If we can move forward to if there are questions from additional questions from the board members for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Dave.
My question would be, I see there's a pretty large retaining wall system built there. Are there specs for the county, in a system where it's close to the river and everything that are involved in retaining walls, or some specifications on how they're made or how they're done so that they don't fail?
Okay, I'll refer that to staff. Is that a permit from a different board or for those retaining walls?
Madam Chair, I'm making an assumption. Those were constructed near at least the time that the home was constructed in 1999. There were no engineering requirements at that time, I don't believe. There are now. But it's really not related to the topic tonight.
So it wouldn't have a nexus to our decision, so, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Dave.
It looks like when I viewed the site, it looks like this is a new retaining wall system that was put in. And I was just wondering if there was a specification that so that we don't all of a sudden have a wall collapse or something and cause a problem with the river. That's what my assumption was when I looked at it. It looked like new construction.
Maybe we could have the applicants comment on that, whether that retaining wall is new construction or was pre-existing.
There are numerous pre-existing ones. We did do a permit that was approved through, I think, Soil and Water. Nick was the gentleman that came out, and we have the permit for that and following manufacturer's specifications.
All right, thank you. As long as we know that that wall is permitted, we're in good shape.
Madam Chair,
Additional
Jill
questions?
DeLong.
Go ahead, Jill.
So I remember when this originally came up, the concern that I had for the steep grade from the proposed shed location and the river. It looks like the roof of the shed is going to be aimed such that water from it will go straight down that steep incline to the river. I don't see any soil and water review of the site with this one. What kind of water mitigation or gutters system or anything is planned for the shed for that?
The shed will be guttered both sides on the eaves, and it will be routed back to the county ditch on 49.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Okay, hearing no additional questions, do we have a motion for findings?
Madam Chair, I move to close the public hearing. Dennis.
All right, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Mike Kane, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is anyone opposed to closing the public hearing? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. And we'll move on to findings. Number one, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, it's R1 zone district. Accessory structures are allowed in the R1 zone area.
All right, we have a yes for number one. Anyone disagree with yes for one? Hearing none, we'll make that unanimous yes. Number two, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls and any related ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, accessory structures are an allowed use, and the applicants are following the rules on accessory structures on a lot of their size. So I think it is in harmony.
All right, we have a yes for number two. Anyone disagree with yes? All right, that is unanimous. Number three, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, under Lakeshore Living, item number 5, encourage implementation of innovative stormwater management practices into shoreline projects such as rain gardens, permeable surfaces, and vegetative buffers. I believe by taking the roof water and focusing it back to the county ditch is a reasonable rainwater plan for that building.
Okay, do we have anyone disagree with yes for number 5 or number 3, excuse me? Mark that as unanimous, yes. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I believe that the owners are using it in a reasonable manner. It's the best place for an accessory structure on that particular lot.
All right, we have a yes for number 4. Anyone disagree with yes for 4? Hearing none, we'll mark that as unanimous. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to the circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. Yes or no?
Madam Chair, as Dennis just alluded, the topography of the lot, even though it's an acre in size, the location it's at is the best spot for that, and the owner has no control over the topography of the land.
All right, we have a yes for number 5. Anyone disagree? Hearing none, we'll mark that as unanimous yes. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, there are other homes in the area with accessory structures. I don't think it changes the essential character.
All right, we have a yes for number 6. Anyone disagree? Hearing none, we'll mark that as unanimous, yes. On number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I believe there was more than economic considerations with this.
All right, we have a yes for number 7. Anyone disagree? Hearing none, mark that as unanimous yes, and we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I make a motion that we approve the applicant's request to construct a 30 by 50 residential structure 33 feet from the right-of-way of County Road 49 and 69 feet, and I'm skipping the point 2 on purpose, from the Sauk River. And with the only condition that the building is guttered, as the applicant indicated.
All right, we have a motion.
Jill DeLong, I second.
All right, thank you, Jill, for the second. I'll do roll call for the rest of the vote. Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And my vote is yes as well. So motion carries. And thank you for being with us. And if you have additional questions, check with environmental staff during regular business hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for adding that gutter part to it, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Item number 3, as posted on our agenda, is not being heard this evening, and the applicant requested the variance has been postponed, and notification will be sent at a future date, and that is for the David and Lisa Kempson application. So then we are down to item number 4, is to consider a request from Randall Kaltoff, Cold Spring, Minnesota, from sections 10.2.11a, 1a, and 2 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a new single-family residential dwelling unit ahead of the established building line and less than 100 feet landward of a lake-classified recreational development. The said ordinance requires structures be placed a minimum of 100 feet landward of a lake-classified recreational development or at or behind the established building line. The affected property is Lot 7 and 8 of Hasling's Second Edition, Section 28, Track 123 North, Range 30 West of Wakefield Township. And the property address is 16405 Canals Lake Circle, Cold Spring, Minnesota. And is the applicant with us?
I am here.
Wonderful. We'll be back to you then in just a few minutes. We will do roll call on who was able to visit the property. Dennis?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And I also visited the property. If we could have the overview then from staff.
Madam Chair, subject property is lots 7 and 8 of Hasling Second Edition. Hasling Second Edition was platted in 1950, obviously prior to official controls. Per the submitted certificate of survey, the tract is 0.42 acres or 18,132 square feet. The applicant purchased this property back in August of 2002, and as you probably saw visiting the site, it is currently a vacant tract of land. Applicant is proposing to construct a new single-family residential dwelling, 4,294 square feet in size, with the attached garage, covered porches, and deck. The nearest point of the proposed construction is 52.1 feet landward of Canals Lake. He has been granted a variance from Wakefield Township to place the home 45 feet from the center line of Canals Lake Circle. And he also has submitted an engineered plan for a pervious paver driveway system. And he did that in order to keep his proposed project under the impervious lot coverage threshold of 25%. The property is in an R1 zoning district on Canals Lake, as I mentioned. That's a rec development lake, and the proposed structure is not in the flood hazard area. Canals Lake is on the list of impaired waters for blue-green algae, basically. The proposed SWCD mitigation options are in your packets. The impervious lot coverage proposed with the project would be 23.4%. One alternative to the proposal would be to slightly downscale the proposed dwelling to move that construction back behind the established building line, slight as it is ahead. The Township of Wakefield, the City of Cold Spring, Minnesota DNR, Sauk River Chain of Lakes Association, Sauk River Watershed District, and owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. Again, I was notified by the administrator of the Sauk River Watershed District, reminding me that the owner would need to obtain a permit from the Watershed District for the project if it's granted. Again, we'd like to note that the mitigation options by the SWCD are just that, options to lessen the impacts to surface waters. The SWCD is not requiring the options be employed, or they will not be enforcing their implementation as a condition if the request is granted. I don't have any correspondence, Madam Chair, and so you can take it away.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to the applicant, and if you have any comments you'd like to share with us, starting out.
I don't, other than we'll find it within the facts of findings that the road is in the wrong platted area, which pushes us closer to the water to meet their restrictions with the township. Is really the only issue of the variance.
Okay, then we'll move to questions for staff or for the applicant from board members.
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, question for staff.
Go ahead.
In our previous meeting, we did have the discussion with Angie Berg about the cash escrow or the credit line for requiring the shoreland mitigation. I see that now on the application, it does say that under number 5 about the cash escrow or letter of credit, and it's not in our packet requirements anymore. So in this case, it's a whole new, brand new construction. Do we need to address that in our discussion today?
Okay, I'll refer that question to staff.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that's certainly up for discussion with the board members if they want to require an escrow to ensure that the applicant implements the mitigation option that's been brought forward by the Soil and Water Office. That's entirely your decision. As I look at the comments from Soil and Water, basically he's asking or suggesting that the applicant maintain the existing vegetation that's on the property currently. It would be a no mow buffer area. So he's not suggesting that the applicant plant. He's just suggesting that the native vegetation that's currently there be salvaged and not removed through the construction process not by mowing that vegetation along the shoreline. So it's not necessarily a situation where he's going to have to do plantings. It's just maintaining the existing vegetation.
Thank you. Yes, then the second part is also to direct the stormwater towards the road. But I remember one of the reasons Angie Berg brought it up was because they had to sometimes keep on visiting the applicant to see if the mitigation efforts were completed or not. So that's why I'm wondering, because it sounds like it would just be the runoff could be handled during the construction planning, and then the buffer on the coastline would just be don't mow there. But I also don't want us to have staff have to, again, keep going and trying to validate without having the money, which sometimes could help push it along. I guess I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Madam Chair, if I could respond, I don't know that an escrow would be beneficial in this instance, just because he's not required to purchase seed or plants to implement this plan that's brought forward here by Soil and Water. It would be a matter of guttering to direct the stormwater towards the road. I don't know how the elevations are going to work out there. Maybe the applicant can give us more insight to that. But one thing I would caution against is the septic drain field is right up to the road right of way, and we do not want to direct any stormwater towards that area to possibly impact the drain field for the septic system.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We can discuss more when we come to the our part of the meeting where we would place conditions on something to decide if we would want any type of escrow amount. I do agree with staff in that, this particular one, just to require an escrow for guttering and things that are part of the normal construction, I think that could lead us into doing that with every house that's ever built, and I think that would be a little bit difficult for the county to try to keep track of. Maybe I'm not looking at this the right way, but that's what I would be thinking.
Madam Chair, Dave Gamrot.
Go ahead, Dave.
My comment is there's lots of trees I see looking at the aerial photo that are left, that are protecting that bank. Present trees are planned left.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions or comments for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just a question for staff. Do you have an overlay with the blueprint where the building line is? Like how far is he over the building line?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I don't, because the house to the north is within 50 feet. It's in the shore impact zone. So we have to use a minimum of 50 feet for that building line. And I don't have a copy that where we have that measurement to extend it across. It's very slightly ahead of the building line. Mostly it's the porch and deck on the lakeside.
Okay, thank you.
And
That was going to be
Madam
my
Chair,
question as well. That's where that building line is.
Yeah, Dennis Gregory, mine as well. And I was trying to figure out the exact footage. And as I was trying to draw it out, it looked like the deck and that other accessory plus a little bit of the house building. And so it would be good. How large is that covered patio? What is the size of that?
If the applicant could respond to that.
I believe it's 14 by 18.
14 deep, 18 wide.
Madam Chair, the plans that I have show it 14 feet towards the lake, 16 feet in width, and the deck is 8 by 20.
That is correct.
So the line that I played with then would be about 16 to 18 feet into the structure, that entire covered patio plus a few feet of the house. And so question for the applicant then, did you look at reducing the size of the house to comply with this, the building line?
We actually looked. Yep, we actually looked at several options. Originally, the deck was going to be on the opposite side of the house, and when we first positioned the house on the lot, it looked good on paper, and we had it staked and surveyed, and it actually looked horrible. We were infringing on the neighbor's front yard to the north so bad, so we actually just shifted the house the best we could. We moved the covered patio to the other side because the lot is kind of L-shaped a little bit, so it just fit that way that much better. Downsizing the footage, it just doesn't make that home lay out very well at all. We looked at a couple options, but it just didn't. We had our architect run a couple scenarios, and this was what we felt was the best solution for that lot.
And when you say it was on the other side, Randall, are you talking about the north side you had it on originally?
No, originally we had it on the south side. Actually, I'll take that back. We had it in the middle, and it just really stuck out so far, as you can see on the aerial footage. By pushing that to the north, it just sits better on that lot.
Yeah. And as far as the road, you requested 45 feet. Was that because that's all the room there was with the sewage system?
Correct.
Okay, so you
Yep.
didn't request 40 feet or 35 feet because you wouldn't have been able to get the sewage system in there?
Correct. With the sewage system there, we have to stay 20 feet from that, and that's where the 45 feet comes into play from the center of the road.
Okay. Yeah, just a comment, Madam Chair. It just seems like this is a little bit too big of a house on too small of a lot. And, so we run into this issue of building lines and size of the lot and size of the house. And, if the house was 10 feet shorter, it would be obviously better than, or 10 feet, I don't know how you want to say that, 10 feet less wide. Or less deep, it would be just that much further from the lake. And only being 52 feet from the lake, I get that there's other houses that are close, but we're always going to have that issue with houses that were built years ago. So it's concerning to me.
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, can the person operating the screen move to the SSTS site drawing page, please? Right, so this one. So I'm looking at this one and I see the 100 lake setback, the 75-foot lake setback. So if they were going to try to fit into a building envelope that met the 100-foot lake setback, it would just be kind of a small triangle, because they would still need to have the SSTS in the same spot it's currently plotted. I don't know if there is a perfect, I don't know if there is a possibility to make a home in that triangle of a building plot that would fit the 100-foot lake setback. It looks to me like the 75-foot lake setback is the one that the applicant's most trying to fit. And it looks to me like that covered deck area is where that 75-foot lake setback kind of extends out following the shoreline. So it feels to me that the applicant is trying to fit that 75-foot lake setback as much as mostly possible. They could have taken off whatever feet from that one corner that's beyond the 75-foot, but it does seem like they're trying to fit a house that's, you know, human-sized in a building site that doesn't have much of an envelope.
Madam Chair, if I could respond.
Yes, go ahead.
So the septic drawing is not completely accurate in terms of the configuration of the home, and the 75-foot is for the septic tank setback that he's showing there. But if you go to their certificate of survey, that's going to have the envelope that showing that small triangle where the building envelope could be and meet all the setbacks. It has the 10-foot side yard, the road setback, and the lake setback on it, and that shows that envelope on there.
Bonnie Mossman, the chair, I would have to be in agreement with Dennis in that, you know, when you look at size of lots, you have to kind of choose your house design to match the size of the lot that you have. I know they they included in their plan the impervious or the pervious driveway, and as a means to, you know, accommodate that. I do have my own personal feelings about the pavers, because if they're not maintained within a few years, they are no longer pervious if they're not maintained correctly. So I'm cautious about those. Comments from other members of the staff or members of the board?
Madam Chair, Dave Gamrad.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I've been looking on my maps and I can't find where it gives actual footage from the property line.
Are you referring to like side yard
Yeah,
property
the
line?
side yard property. Yeah.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I could respond. The certificate of survey shows the nearest side property setback of 13.2 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, sorry.
Go
Madam
ahead,
Chair,
Dennis.
Gregory, just to further my comment a little bit, and you know, as a board, we're not into building houses, so we just have observations, and so this is just purely an observation. We have a 4-car garage on here, and so really that's what my thinking was, is that the covered patio and deck could have been inset and using up 2 stalls of that garage to reconfigure. And so we would have just stayed further away from the lake. And so I don't absolutely disagree with Member DeLong, that there is a tight building envelope and he's going to be outside the building envelope. That's really not my worry or my concern. My concern is, did we do everything we could to stay as far away from the lake as we can? And with a 4-car garage and a few other things, I think there were some options. And I appreciate that the applicant looked at a number of options, is taking into account the neighbor's sight line. Those are all good things, and seems to be open to water mitigation. So those are all pluses. It just seems like we're starting with something that maybe doesn't quite fit the lot. Thanks.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board or comments from the board before we move on to findings?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, move to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a motion to close. Is there a second?
Dave Cameron, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to close and a second. Is anyone opposed to closing the public hearing? I'm hearing none. The public hearing is now closed, and we will move on to doing findings of fact. To construct a single-family residential dwelling unit ahead of the established building line and less than 100 feet landward of the lake classified as recreational development. Number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located.
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, it is R1 zoned and single family residential is allowed in R1 zoned area.
All right, we have a yes for number 1. Anyone disagree with that? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous, yes. The variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls and any ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I do not think it's in harmony. It is a house that doesn't fit on this lot appropriately. It's ultimately gets too close to the lake, and I think the general purposes of the controls are to minimize the impact not only on lake water quality, but also sight from the lake. And so I don't think it ultimately meets the general purposes and intent.
All right, we have 1 no for number 2. Any other comments or discussion on 2? Does anyone disagree with no for number 2? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous no for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong. I'm going to say no under Lakeshore Living policies. Number 1, to limit the impacts of additional shoreland development by clustering housing away from shorelands using a conservation design approach. I believe that it is being too close to the shore.
Okay, we have a no for number 3. Any other discussion? Anyone disagree with no for number 3? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous no. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, I believe it is reasonable for a person who owns a lot to build their forever home or their dream home on it. So I do believe that's a yes.
All right, we have a yes for number 4. Anyone disagree? Mark that as unanimous yes. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner.
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, I'm going to say because it's new construction, the landowner does have all the capabilities to make modifications before the house was built. So I'm going to say no.
All right, we have a no for number 5. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair,
Anyone
Jill
opposed?
DeLong.
Go ahead, Jill.
I would say because the building envelope for this lot size is incredibly small, that it's not entirely due to the plight of the landowner.
Okay, we have 1 yes and 1 no for number 5, so we'll do roll call on the remainder. Dennis,
No.
Dave,
Yes.
and I also am a no. So we have 3 no's and 2 yeses on number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, building a house on this lot will not change the essential character of the locality.
All right, so we have a yes for number 6. Does anyone disagree with that? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous, yes. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I don't believe economics was a consideration.
All right, so we have a yes for number 7. Anyone disagree with yes for 7? All right, we'll mark that as unanimous, yes. We are then ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I'd make a motion that we deny the applicant's request for a variance to construct a new single-family residential dwelling ahead of the established building line and 52.1 feet landward of the ordinary high water level of Canal Lake.
All right, we have a motion to deny. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, Dave Gamrod, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll do roll call on the remainder. Jill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Motion is denied. Motion to construct is denied. So if you have additional questions on where you go from here as far as redesigning your house plan or whatever you need to do, you can ask additional questions to county staff during regular business hours. Thank you for coming this evening. All right, our next item on the agenda is item number 5 is to consider a request from Matthew and Kimberly Burkhart of Laramie, Wyoming from sections 9.9.9A1 and 10.2.11A1A of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct 2 covered decks located in an R1 zoning district and on a recreational development lake less than 100 feet landward of Rice Lake, and one of the decks is less than 10 feet from a side yard property line. The said ordinance requires a 100-foot structural setback to a lake classified as recreational development and a 10-foot side property line setback in an R1 zoning district. The affected property is part of Lot 6 and Lot 7 of Brezen Park, Section 9, Track 122 North, Range 31 West of Eden Lake Township, and the property address is 23251 Danube Road, Paynesville, Minnesota. And is the applicant with us?
We are, Madam Chairman and members of the board.
All right, we'll be back to you in just a few minutes. First, we'll do roll call on who was able to visit the property. Dennis?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes, and I visited with the applicant.
All right, thank you. And I also visited the property. So if we'll go ahead with the update from staff.
Madam Chair, the subject property is the west half of Lot 6 and all of Lot 7 of Bresson Park, platted in 1957, again prior to official controls. Per their submitted certificate of survey, the tract is 9,404 square feet or 0.22 acres. The original structure on the property was like a 12 by 16 porch with an 8 by 14 deck, which was placed in 1967 according to our county assessor's records. Previous owners of the property obtained a construction site permit in 1982 to construct a 20 by 24 dwelling addition. That was actually constructed at 24 by 24. The current owners purchased the property on May 10th, 2019. They are proposing to construct a 10 by 18 covered deck that would be located 62.4 feet from the lake, and that would replace the existing 8 by 14 deck on the east side of the structure. They also would like to construct a 12 by 16 covered deck, and that is 77 feet landward of the lake and 8 feet from that west property line, which would essentially square off that existing structure and utilize that void space. Both covered decks are ahead of the established building line. There will be a 4-foot ingress and egress walkway that will connect the two, and that walkway is an allowable encroachment into the setback requirements. They also are proposing to construct a new 14 by 20 deck to replace the existing concrete step front entry to the dwelling. That's going to meet the setback requirements. The property is in an R1 zoning district on Rice Lake, which is a rec development lake. The proposed structures are not in a flood hazard area. Rice Lake is on the list of impaired waters for mercury in fish and nutrient eutrophication. The septic system was certified compliant on May 20th of this year. The applicants currently are engaged with the Stearns Soil and Water Office on a restoration project to address mitigation efforts on the property. The existing impervious lot coverage per their certificate of survey is 12.9. The proposed, if they're allowed to construct what they're proposing, would increase it to 19.4%. The Township of Eden Lake, Minnesota DNR, Rice Lake Association, North Fork of the Crow River Watershed District, and owners within 500 feet have been notified of the request. One recommended condition would be to restrict approval to authorize only the proposed pergolas over the decks. No future roof over the deck or enclosure of the deck space would be allowed. Again, note that the mitigation options developed by Stearns are just options, and they're not requiring them to be employed or enforcing their implementation. But the owners, again, are involved and engaged with the Soil and Water Office on a shoreline restoration project. I did get some additional correspondence from the applicants today. I forwarded that to all of you via email. I don't know if you had an opportunity to view that. I do have it in printed form. It's a bit lengthy. If you want to discuss further, maybe the applicant can just summarize the comments that they submitted if you haven't been able to view that. Other than that, I don't have any correspondence, Madam Chair, and so we can open the public hearing.
Okay, and just maybe to accommodate things a little bit better, board members, I will maybe just do a roll call of how many of you were able to go ahead and read their comments. That way the applicants will know whether we received, whether you read that information or not. Because it did come, on the day of. So Dennis,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Dave.
I'm in the process.
Okay, and I did receive it and read it earlier. So Dave is reading it right now, and the rest of us have all read it. So that helps us out. So if we can go to the applicants, and if you can share with us information that you have for us.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for considering this application. In the deck on the east side of the house is original.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for
been-
just a moment. If I can stop you for just a moment. I think your sound is cutting out to us. And sometimes with the internet access, if you shut off your video, we won't be able to see you, but sometimes that helps us hear you better. I'm not sure if that'll work for sure, but we'll try it. Okay, could you try your sound now?
Thank you for the suggestion, Madam Chair. Is this better?
Yes, the sound is coming through much better. Thank you.
Okay. The east deck on the property, as far as we can tell, is probably the original deck, and we've been doing some repairs to it to keep it functional. We see this as an opportunity to replace that deck and make it structurally safe, as well as the orientation of the stairs with respect to the entrance of the cabin make it such that you have no landing in order to get in the house. And so this is an opportunity to move the steps out from the doorway and allow a landing and a good egress into the house. The deck on the west side is kept just within the boundary of the house to square it off. The decks weren't designed to extend to the lakeside any farther than the front of the existing structure. The walkway to connect them, it was felt that was the easiest way to access the west deck without putting in stairs or increasing the visual mass for folks that would be seeing this from the lake. On the west side, the house already encroaches on the setback just slightly. And the pergolas on top of the deck are simply a kind of a decorative structure for shade to put some hanging flower baskets on there. We do not wish to cover with an impervious roof those lakeside decks. It was felt that by leaving some gaps in the deck boards, we would help with distributing any runoff that happens on the decks and get it down to the ground in a distributed manner. We've been in contact with Soil and Water Conservation District since before this deck project came up. We started that with initial fact finding last summer and then reaching out to Greg Berg and meeting with him on site in December. That's to address other concerns we had about the way the previous owner had the property set up and how we can change things to be a better neighbor to the lake environment. I did have just a comment on the building line that staff had shown. As you can see, the entire house essentially exists forward of that line. The house is kind of on a point out into the lake and narrows such at the top that we've tried to keep everything as close to the house and back as far as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One question I have for the applicant. I always try to watch out for that there will be future problems for the applicant. And this might be a question for staff. The 20 by 24 addition that was permitted in 82, that turned out to be 24 by 24. Is that piece that sticks out toward the lake?
The house that was constructed on the permit is on the roadside. It is away from the lake. The original part of the structure, the enclosed porch, is the small 12 by 16 piece that is on the lake side that's being highlighted by staff.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be permitting something that surrounded something that was not correct on the building permit. Okay, so that's not a point, except for the deck on the roadside. So that I don't know if that's something they should address in the future. I don't know, staff, is there any problem with that as far as that not being correct on the building permit? All right, I see staff shaking their head, no, that's not a problem for them. So other questions or comments from board members?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, question for staff. Is there a limit to the running feet of walkway? And let me further my question. So we have a walkway going on the lake side of the house. If instead of a west deck, there was a walkway that went around that L shape of the where the deck is. So instead of a deck, it'd be a walkway only. Is there any limitations to the amount of walkway that the applicant can have?
Madam Chair, Member Gregory, the limitation would be 4 feet in width. So, right, there's no limit on the length. Yeah.
Okay. And then a follow-up question then for the applicant. Putting out my cards here, the east deck, I can get my head around that. The west deck, I can't, frankly. And so what I was trying to think about is if you still wanted access, if you still wanted to, quote, divide up the siding, get rid of that big wall, did you consider a walkway just around the entire structure other than the east deck?
Madam Chair and Board Member Gregory, if I understand correct, constructing a walkway from the east deck around the house, following the perimeter out 4 feet, so that there would essentially be an L walkway in that open area.
Correct. That's my question.
The hope is to turn that into an outdoor living area, such that it could also function as an area to enjoy the outdoors. There's no putting a walkway in there would just serve to put a 4-foot walkway in there without any room for chairs or anything. There would be, that was felt that walkway from the east deck over to the west deck that would fill in that L was the least intrusive way to do that without putting stairs and a landing and further complicating the front of the structure. If that answers your question, sir.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments from board members? Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we would be ready to close the public hearing.
Mike Kane, so move.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close. Anyone disagree with that? The meeting or the hearing then is then closed. Number one on findings, the proposed use is allowed.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry for the interruption.
Yes, Dennis?
And maybe other members feel differently. Is there any way that we can do separate findings of fact for each deck?
We certainly could do that.
Yeah. And maybe I'm alone in that thought. And so I guess it would, from my standpoint, it would be great to do two findings.
All right, are you talking about two findings? So which two decks would you be combining?
Not combining, because the one is permitted. So just the east and the west
Right.
deck. Yep. And
Okay,
so
the east and the west deck would be on one finding?
no, sorry, Madam Chair. Two separate findings, one for the east deck and one for the west
Okay.
deck. The
Okay.
deck in front of the house or the roadside is a permitted
That
deck.
fits in, right? All right, we certainly can do that.
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I guess I can kind of understand having them separate, but I'm also okay having them together. But maybe that's me showing my cards.
All right, so we have one board member that would like to do them separate, one that would like to do them together. What's the feeling of the rest of the members?
Mike Kane, I'll agree with Joe. I think one finding is fine for both decks.
All right, and Dave, what's your thought?
I would say one for both decks.
And I also would be fine with just one. So it looks like we're going to do one finding of facts. So number one, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, it's one R1 zoned and decks are allowed in the R1 zoned area.
All right, we have a yes for number one. Anyone disagree? We'll mark that as a unanimous yes. Number two, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls or any related ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I will say no, it's not in harmony. The intent of and the purposes of the official controls is to limit the amount of construction that is closer to the shore. I understand in this case that the house is already that close. And so the east deck is already an expansion of the current deck. And then the walkway is 4 feet closer, which is permitted to get to the west deck, which is only 8 feet from the property line. And so I think the intent was to limit the construction when it impacted both property lines and ultimately the amount of construction in the, I'll call it the lake zone.
All right, we have one no for number two. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I believe that it is in harmony with the current ordinances. They're just squaring off the current property, and I believe that they're still well below the proposed impervious lot coverage. They're not really encroaching on the waterway other than the allowed walkway between the two. So I believe it is within the ordinance.
All right, so for number 2, we have 1 yes and 1 no, so we'll do a roll call. Mike,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and I also would be a yes. So we have a yes, 4 yeses and 1 no for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I apologize. I did lose internet connection during the discussion for this one. Did we talk at all about the water mitigation for this project?
I believe it was mentioned, but not a significant amount of discussion about it.
And just looking at the notes again, it does sound like they are actively working with the Soil and Water Conservation District for a shoreline restoration project. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, I know I'm swimming upriver here, given the votes, but I would point out Lakeshore Living Policy number 1, which limit the impacts of additional shoreline development by clustering housing away from the shorelines. And I'm taking that in a broad sense that it also includes additional construction on existing houses. So I do not think it is, whatever the wording is, consistent with the comprehensive plan.
All right, we have a no for number 3. Any other thoughts on that?
Madam Chair, Dave Gamrod.
Yep.
I think
Go ahead.
if you take away the 4-foot walkway, the infringement onto the rest of the deck probably would be, with the ankles that are there, would probably be less than a foot. So I just wanted to bring that out. And a walkway is a permitted infringement.
All right, so then are you a yes for number 3?
Yes, I'm a yes.
All right, then we'll do roll call on number 3. Jill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. So on number 3, we have 4 yeses and 1 no. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, I believe it's reasonable to have a lake home and want to be outside and enjoy the views by adding a deck. So I believe that's reasonable.
So we have a yes for number 4. Anyone disagree? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous, yes. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner.
Madam Chair, to be consistent, I do not think it's due to circumstances unique to the property. The landowner has the ability not to have a deck on the west side. And if they didn't have the deck on the west side, it would not encroach on the property line. So I am a no.
All right, and I do need to agree with Dennis on number 5. I do believe that the designs of the deck were the landowner's decision. So I am going to say a no on number 5. So we have 2 no's. Any other discussion on number 5? Does anyone disagree with no for number 5?
Madam Chair, Dave Gamrod, I will say yes on number 5.
All right. Then I'll do roll call on the remaining. Jill?
going to say yes.
And Mike.
I will also say yes.
All right, on number 5, we have 3 yeses and 2 nos. On number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong. Yes, I believe it's going to maintain the essential character and possibly improve it. As the applicant states, that corner of the house in the yard currently is mostly useless, and now it will have a nice new deck on it. So yes, it will maintain and possibly improve the essential character.
All right, we have a yes for number 6. Any discussion, or does anyone disagree with yes? Hearing none, I'll mark that as unanimous yes for number 6. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic concerns.
Madam Chair, Mike Kane, economic weren't really discussed as this plan.
All right, does anyone disagree with yes for number 7? So I'll mark that as unanimous yes. We are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll defer making a motion to one of the other members.
Madam Chair, Dave Cameron, I'll make a motion that we approve the decks, and also I don't know if we have to put a thing on the environment for the project on the shoreland, but that's maybe a separate issue because it is started already. I don't know if we need that.
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I'd also like to add to authorize only pergolas over the decks.
All right, Dave, would you be open to adding that as a condition
Yes.
on your, okay, that
Yes, I
only
would.
pergolas?
Yep.
All right.
Madam Chair, Dennis Gregory, just a point of order, and I think Dave was asking about it. Should we not have as a condition on here that they need to complete the shoreline restoration project that they're working on?
We certainly can add that as a condition, I believe. Dave, are you
I
open
would,
to that?
I would go along with that. I'll go along with that in that addition.
All right, and I have one question for staff in regard to that. Would it be considered a nexus between this project and the shoreline project? Because we're not able to add a condition unless there's a nexus to the project. Would you consider this to be a nexus to it?
Well, if I read, Madam Chair, if I read Soil and Water's comments correctly, they say to consider a condition that the applicants follow through with the restoration project. So that's entirely up to the board if you want to add that as a condition.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure that there is a proper connection between the two requests, or between the request and the condition. All right, so we can add the condition that they complete the project. Dave, are you open to adding that to your motion?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion to approve with 2 conditions. One, that the decks only have pergolas, not solid roofs, and that they complete the water project that is in process. Do we have a second to that motion?
Jill DeLong, I second.
All right, I'll do roll call on the remainder. Dennis?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So motion carries. if you have additional questions, you can check with staff during regular business hours for any other questions you might have. I believe our next meeting is going to be back to being in person. Am I correct? It is. So we will be back here at the West Stearns County Service Center. Any other questions or things that staff want us to address this evening?
Madam Chair, I have good news, and it looks like there's only 6 applications, so 1 meeting again for July.
Madam Chair, Jill DeLong, I have a question for staff for the in-person meeting, because I have a child who is not available to have a vaccine yet. Are there going to be spacing requirements or anything, or will it be like it was pre-pandemic?
It's my understanding that we are not under any spacing requirements. But if you'd like some accommodation, we can certainly move a table to the side so that we make sure that you have appropriate spacing. And if you feel like you'd like to wear a face covering as well, but it is not a requirement for face coverings in July because the emergency order is over.
Okay, thank you. Yes, if you could have a chair off to the side for me, I would appreciate that, just until there's vaccines available for kids.
Perfect.
And is there any other staff member, or excuse me, board members that would like to request any other accommodations other than what Jill has requested? And maybe a suggestion to staff, if maybe when they send out the next agenda to those 2 members that were not present, you know, if you could put maybe a note in there saying that if they wanted any special accommodations, they should let you know before the meeting.
I will check with them.
Okay, for Jake and Jason, just so then we aren't having to switch things around once they arrive.
Yep, I'll try to make sure I have enough room on either end. And I think we'll just put additional tables on so that we can accommodate and try to physically space at least until we get a vaccine which hopefully will be soon for everybody.
Madam Chair, a quick question for staff. You know, since I had visited the site before it was withdrawn, curious why Thomas and Susan Hollingsworth withdrew their request.
Madam Chair, Member Gregory, the Hollingsworths made the decision to withdraw based on feedback that they were limiting their buyer pool by only having holding tanks serving the dwelling. And so, yeah, they do have a design in for a full system, a mound system. And so they felt that that was the direction to go instead of limiting to the holding tanks and a potential high maintenance issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, well, if there's no other discussion, we are ready for a motion to close the meeting.
So move.
And a second?
I'll second, Dennis.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.